On our healing journeys, it can be really easy to believe that we need to do everything perfectly if we are going to heal. So I'm going to share with you how perfectionism showed up in my illness and throughout my healing journey, and how I had to break free of it so that I could reduce the pressure on myself and give my body the space to heal. So I hope by sharing my story, it helps you identify where perfectionism could be showing up in your recovery and slowing you down. And also to give you a bit of hope that there is a way of healing that doesn't involve all this pressure that we put on ourselves. So when I first became ill, the pursuit of perfection loomed very large. So when my health problems really started to take over my life, I was working a full-time job. And if you're in that situation currently, you know how desperate it feels. And yet my perfectionist self was not happy with me just being able to stay in that job. Even though I was sleeping only a couple of hours a night, it would set the alarm till 4:30 in the morning and force me to get out of bed and go to gym, because that side of me did not like the way that my body was starting to look as my health was declining. And I really thought if I pushed harder, things would miraculously change. And it was interesting because when things really got tough for me with my health, I doubled down on perfection. So once I accepted I was sick and stopped working, the perfectionist me threw all my precious depleted energy into getting better. And I used to struggle with the sight of my sick body in the mirror, always scrutinizing and poking and prodding it, as if the fact that it was sick wasn't enough of a reason to leave it alone. So I would dip in and out of over-exercising in those early couple of years of my health recovery. I would watch my calories so that I wouldn't put on any weight. And I can remember dragging myself around the kitchen, knowing that I needed to rest, but not allowing myself the space to do that until I'd done everything that I needed to do on my protocols, because I believed if I didn't do it perfectly, I wouldn't heal. And I had no energy for cleaning, but the perfectionist me would beat me up on a daily basis for not having a perfectly tidy home. When friends came over, even though I had no energy to do anything, I would drag myself around the house, cleaning, prepare lavish meals, and then when they came, I would stay up longer than I could cope with physically, just so that I was the perfect host. And I got repaid for that with an energy crash the next day. Perfectionism can feel like somebody else is driving you all the time. And if you don't do everything perfectly, it can feel really unsafe. So for me, it was much easier to keep pushing myself than deal with the anxiety that came when I didn't. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know I only discovered medical medium quite late in the day. And as wonderful as medical medium is, it played really heavily into the perfectionist in me. And I see this in a lot of medical medium followers, because with medical medium, there is an endless array of things that you can do for your health. And because there's so many things you can do, a lot of it feels so essential. It can be like kryptonite for a perfectionist. So I couldn't afford all the supplements. And so I had to take other supplements. And there was always this little voice that was telling me that because I wasn't taking the Vimagee supplements, I just wasn't going to get better. So I spent a lot of time feeling anxious about the supplements I was taking. I worried because I wasn't able to get all organic of everything, that perhaps that might hold me back. And everything I did came with this energy of wanting to do it perfectly. A medical medium also at the beginning particularly requires a lot of effort, because you're learning a new way of doing things. Until you get your hacks in place, it can feel like a lot of work. So even during flares, the perfectionist in me would push through just to make sure I did everything that I was supposed to do on my medical medium plan. Because if I didn't keep up with everything, I was not going to heal. So while we're talking about flares, have you noticed that any time you've had a flare, the more you worry about the flare and the more you focus on it, the worse the flare gets? And to help you with that, I've created a free EFT meditation which can help you deal with the fear of flares. And I've put the link down in the description. If you need some help with flares and you want to go through them with calm and ease, go check it out. Perfectionism is celebrated in our society, and yet it really works against us when we're chronically ill. So why do we do it? It doesn't just show up the minute you get sick. I was a perfectionist my whole life, and I remember the stress of striving for perfect grades, the amount of pressure I put on myself to have the perfect body, and then when I was older, the perfect home. And of course, we know logically that perfection just does not exist. But that didn't stop me striving and feeling like I was never good enough. And I really believe that one of the contributing factors to the chronic illness was perfection and that constant drive to always do better. Not only was it stressful and a lot of pressure, but I ran myself into the ground, and the fear of not doing things perfectly drove me to overwork and to overachieve. It's interesting because when we have chronic illness, we tend to fall back into old behaviors that have helped us in the past. But as I've seen with perfectionism, they're often the things that contributed to the illness in the first place. And it always reminds me of that old Albert Einstein quote, as we can't solve our problems with the same thinking that created them in the first place. And the core belief that often drives perfectionism is often the fear of not being good enough. And so for me to break free of this unhealthy behavior, I really had to make peace with myself and accept where I was, warts and all. And when I came to the place of self-acceptance, it became easier to let things go. And that's because it wasn't serving me. And in an ironic twist, it was the very thing that was stopping me from doing a good job at recovering my health. And when I finally let go, I felt like I could breathe for the first time. I felt free, and I took consistent but imperfect steps towards health recovery. I accepted that I didn't have Vimagee supplements, and the ones I had would be perfectly okay. And I'd forget to take them sometimes, and I'd accept that my produce wasn't all organic. It was still wonderful, and it would still help to heal my body just as it was. And I let my friends see me as I was, a quite broken person, and I showed my vulnerability to them instead of putting on a hard, perfect exterior. And it felt good. And it was a process, and it didn't come all at once. It took some time, and from time to time, perfectionism still rears its ugly head in my life. You know, I sometimes post these videos and I worry that I haven't put all the details in, that maybe the editing wasn't sharp enough, but I keep working towards being perfectly imperfect. So if you've made it this far in the video, I want you to ask yourself, what would life feel like if what I'm doing is good enough? How would you approach your health recovery? How would it change if what you were doing was good enough in this moment? You get some clarity on this, please share it in the comments. I love having a conversation with you guys. So trying to do everything perfectly when I first started Medical Medium did not help me at all. So if you want to avoid the mistakes I've made, make sure you check out this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.